You're now watching the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mike Missanelli podcast, brought to you by BetRivers. Big show today. We'll get deeper into some baseball issues with the signing of Zack Wheeler and what the Phillies are continuing to do in spring training. We'll look at the NFL Combine and where the Eagles may go. Of course, the big story in our current, as we like to say here at the Mike Missanelli podcast, Jason Kelce. He retires. You know, we kind of thought it was coming. And when he called the press conference yesterday, we knew it wasn't to tell people that he was coming back. And I applaud. I think it's time for him to step out. I think he's got a life to consider. He's going to be held in major demand for the networks that broadcast football games, either as a studio guy or someone calling a game with a team. But listen, this is a great career. And, centers don't get the kind of acclaim that Jason Kelce got in this town, because here's the difference. Jason Kelce was perfect for this city. And I know sometimes we go overboard with this blue-collar, tough guy persona with Philadelphia, but he fit it perfectly. I mean, let's face it. He plugged in to the sports fans in this town in a big way. And it wasn't forced. He was kind of a naturally gruff type of crude but good player who gave his all. That resonates with people when you shotgun beers and when the head coach delivers a keg to your house and you partake and you show it on social media. And, of course, his famous brother, and they formed the podcast together. So he was riding high. And I think it's a really good time for him to get out. Now, yesterday, a lot of people were calling it the best retirement speech ever. It was a little long, let's face it. And it was long because he broke up many times emotionally. He couldn't even get the words out to start, really. It took like about 5 minutes for him really to gain his composure to start the speech. As soon as he got up there, he said, we'll see how long this lasts. And boom, here comes the rain. And you can feel he was choked up about it. There are a couple ways to look at it. Maybe it was a little too long. But there's nobody in Philadelphia that's ever going to say that retirement speech was too long and it was too emotional, because Jason Kelce is the everyman. And that's the way he went out. It's the way he came in. Now, there are a lot of memorable moments with it. I remember Jason Kelce. There's the rare center that could do what he wanted to do or do what he did, which is to get out in front of the play and get to the next level. I've never seen a center you get off and get to the next level where he's plowing into a linebacker to make that running play go by. He was fantastic at it. And the first guy who noticed that, I think he came in as a 6th-round draft pick. And he comes into Philadelphia and he's kind of light for a center. And that was the days when the NFL had centers that had to be big and burly. And I remember Howard Mudd, who was the offensive line coach for many years with the Colts and who had Jeff Saturday, came here and said, and right away thought that Jason Kelce was the perfect center for this team. And everybody's going, well, this guy, he's like 280 pounds at best. You can't play center in this league at 280 pounds. And what Mudd saw was the ability to get to that next level that many centers. And the burden that takes off the rest of your offensive line when your center could be that active in the blocking scheme. And that's what Jason Kelce did. And there's so many moments. I don't want to go over every moment of his career and every game that he contributed to Eagles victories. But there's so many notable things that accompanied Jason Kelce as the whole Jason Kelce action figure, right? Number one was the Mudd thing. That came up to me like right away, that offensive line coach saw something in him that was special. But let me just tick off a few of them. Fat Batman. All right, there was skinny Batman. All of a sudden, he's Fat Batman on the sidelines, which I didn't like at the time because it seemed to humiliate the other team. And he's wearing a Batman mask on the sidelines, parading around. Didn't like it, but it was he didn't do it to be an asshole. He did it in the moment that he was celebrating the moment. And that's the one thing about him. Like, he was never doing stuff to be an asshole. It was just naturally Jason Kelce. How about the Christmas album? Well, they raised $1.25 million for charities, the treatment center, Children's Crisis Treatment Center, for that album. And now, if he's not involved in that, or if Mailata's not involved in it, probably doesn't go anywhere. But he knew that if he backed that kind of thing, it would get a lot of sales for charity. That's the kind of guy he was. How about the Tide commercial that pops out of the woodwork this year? After all these years, him getting his butt pounded playing center, he finally gets some national acclaim in a Tide commercial where he pops out of a load of dirty laundry with Mailata and Cox. Now, that's when the Eagles were going good. So that commercial resonated. When they were like on top of the heap, that was a good commercial. By the end of the season, people are probably looking at the guy that's freaking Tide commercial with these guys. They stink. They lost 6 or 7 games. But that's notable in his career. Let's go with the he played Fly Eagles Fly at the Man on baritone sax with the Philadelphia Orchestra. Well, that's like Clinton being on with Arsenio. I mean, that's fabulous. It's a moment that we etched in time here in Philadelphia. Season 13, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He gets an appearance on that. The underdog mentality, which I think was created by Lane Johnson, maybe, but Kelce certainly was involved in that because out of that springs the underdog apparel line that he backed. Also, the podcast with his brother, which is wildly entertaining. Drinking with the Buffalo Bills fans in the playoffs this year. Kelce, the documentary. And finally, he gets in People magazine as one of the sexiest men alive. This squat guy with a beard looks like a lumberjack. He's the sexiest man alive. My man had a gift. And now he goes out. And so where does this put the Eagles? I don't think anybody's thinking of that right now. They're still kind of awash with this whole celebration with one of the all-time popular players in this city. But obviously now the guy they drafted who played guard, Jurgens, will move over to center. And they have to figure out who's going to play right guard. Could it be Steen? Well, they have to go out and get a guy. Could it be Opeta? You know, you can't take this lightly. He was a stability in that line for a really long time. Made all the calls, made all the right calls. Messed up a couple snaps, but that's to be, expected. So I started to think about a center being on the all-time Eagles list because you would never in a million years think of that naturally. So I just put a list together in my head on where does he rank as an all-time Eagle. And I'm not talking about personality. I'm talking about career. So here was my list, and we'll bring producer Darren in this. Darren, I'm going to give you a top 10. You can either tell me I'm missing somebody or agree with it, and then we'll go beyond 10 and try to figure out who's next and who's next and who's next on the list.
So are the parameters just ability to play, or what he meant
ability.
To the team?
It's not. It has nothing to do with personality. These are all-time Eagles according to ability. Now, it doesn't hurt if you have personality. Maybe that adds to your candidacy. But I'm talking about your play on the field primarily. All right. So let's start because this is my favorite Eagle of all time. I think if you are arguably the best player at your position, you have to be considered the number one Eagle. Reggie White is a legendary defensive end and maybe the best in history. I can't possibly put anybody over Reggie White. So he's got my number one slot. Number two,
there's no question.
Brian Dawkins. Now, here's the caveat to this. I have put the old school guys in their own separate list because the people that I didn't really see a lot, and I'm an old guy, but I didn't see every Eagle. So the legends of Chuck Bednarik or Steve Van Buren or Tommy McDonald or Norm Van Brocklin, who you've named your dog after, the Dutchman, or like Bob Brown as a Hall. I don't know enough about those guys. So there's a separate list of 5. So let's go with 2 Brian Dawkins. I can't help but put Jason Kelce as number 3.
Wow.
I mean, listen, I go, he's a center. I can't think of anybody who meant more to his team and was efficient a player as that guy in that third hole, which means I've got Harold Carmichael, another all-timer, at 4. I've got him behind Jason Kelce. Let's stop here. Darren, do you agree with that so far?
Wow.
You don't?
It doesn't sound like I should agree with you. I don't feel like I should agree with you. Here's why I may agree with you. The only team to win the Super Bowl, the 2017 team. There's no one. I was trying to think who else on that roster would you even consider in a list like this, and there's no one. There's not a single other player on the entire Super Bowl winning roster. So I don't know. I'm a big Wilbert Montgomery
Well, he's coming
guy.
up soon.
Jerome Brown.
Yeah, Jerome Brown only played 2 years.
Man.
He's not it. He's not. Like, listen, all due respect, Jerome Brown, he doesn't belong on the best players list. He didn't play long enough.
Eric Allen.
All right, well, I'm getting to these guys. Now, hold on a second.
I think I would put Eric Allen ahead of Kelce.
No way. There's no way you could put Eric Allen ahead of Kelce.
It's a much more difficult position to play.
I'm sorry. I don't agree with that.
Okay,
so anyway,
I'm all right with you going Kelce in the top 5. I don't know if I can go 3.
All right. So I got Kelce 3.
Okay.
I got Harold Carmichael 4. Right. I've got the best quarterback in Eagles history at 5. I know people hate him.
Brad
He's the
Gable?
best quarterback in franchise history. The most important position in football. How could he not be 5 on the list? Donovan McNabb.
Number 5 will always love you, Mike.
Number 5 will always love you, and that's why I got him at number 5. It's perfect symmetry.
I agree.
Right.
He
number 6, Brian Westbrook.
See, now we're talking about a guy we know.
All right. Number 7.
All right. Go ahead.
Jason Peters.
Yeah, he's up there, definitely.
Number 8, Wilbert Montgomery.
Yeah, see, I'm a big Wilbert guy. I'd probably put him a little higher, but okay.
Number 9, Eric Allen.
There's my man.
And number 10, Lane Johnson.
Yeah, no doubt. There's no doubt about it. This team has had some really good linemen. Going back to size.
So that's my top 10. Now, there's a lot of people, you can argue with this, and I know a lot of people listening to this podcast. Well, you forgot this guy, I don't know how I'd rank the next, but here are the contenders for the next slots.
All right.
Fletcher Cox.
Okay.
You see, you're judging him by today's standards, which
No,
is
I'm
a
not.
mistake. All right. LaShawn McCoy.
Yep, definitely.
Randall Cunningham.
Yeah, I mean, he was a game changer. I mean, he's my all-time favorite Eagle.
Jeremiah Trotter.
Or no, I wouldn't go there.
You're not feeling that?
No.
All
Love
right.
Trot. Hung out with Trot. Know him well. Can't put him in the top 20. Not maybe top 25.
Malcolm Jenkins.
Man, that's a good one. He never missed a game here, I don't think. I don't think he missed one single game in his 10 years in Eagle, and very few with the Saints. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Bill Berge.
All I hear is Conklin's impersonation of him when I hear that name.
Well, you were young. You were young.
I met Bill Berge. My dad introduced me to him at a mall one time. He was just kind of sitting in the mall in the middle of the mall.
All right. John Runyon.
Yeah, John Runyon, definitely. Yep, absolutely.
And finally, for consideration, Ron Jaworski, who to me is the third best quarterback in Eagle history.
He's the most overrated player in the history of the city of Philadelphia.
No, he was not. He was tough. He was tough, and he played on a team that went to the Super Bowl. I can't ignore his contributions. I got to have at least 3 quarterbacks on this top 20.
He's not making my top 20. That's
all right. Well, he doesn't make it. So who have I left out here, Mr. Football?
Oh, man.
It's one thing to say, well, he doesn't belong. When in your brain, you don't have anybody else to put in there. Well, who did I miss?
I think maybe you could put Troy. You could give Troy Vincent some
Troy Vincent is a consideration. You're right. Troy Vincent should be a name. That's considered.
I'm trying to think of the linemen. They have had some really good offensive and defensive linemen. I think you have to put Clyde Simmons into consideration.
Clyde Simmons is a very good name. And at this point, you could put Jerome Brown. Not in the top 10, but a small body of work, you can say, okay, maybe he was top 20.
Yeah, I think you could also – Byron Evans is a name I would certainly consider.
Okay, and I forgot Mike Quick.
Mike Quick, definitely.
I forgot Mike Quick for consideration. I can't believe
all
I forgot.
these guys, by the way, every one of them before Jaworski. With all due respect to Ron,
Well,
who's had more success selling
I have
cars.
great reverence for the quarterback position. So you're not going to tell me that another position is better. Like, I could put Lito Shepherd into consideration also.
Big
Or
Lito
Sheldon
guy.
Brown. Some guy. If I can put Troy Vincent in there, maybe I got to consider those guys.
No,
but it is
Vincent's
an interesting
ahead of
barroom argument. But my point is
I feel like I
that
should have
I
a
could
beard
not put anybody ahead of Jason Kelce in the all-time Eagle, and I got it. Reggie
No, I
White,
think you're
Brian
right.
Dawkins, Jason Kelce, 1, 2, 3, bang.
I think you're right. If I thought of my Mount Rushmore of Eagles, I think you've got Reggie, certainly Dawkins, certainly Kelce, and I guess maybe Ben Narek would be my fourth.
All right. Let's get to some baseball issues. Thank you for listening to our football stuff there with Jason Kelce and the retirement ceremony and speech that will never be forgotten in these parts for a really long time. Zack Wheeler, they got him under contract. Now, I didn't know what they were going to do here. I really didn't, because anybody who represents a pitcher these days wants the years. And then they figure it out later, and they let the team figure it out later. And it's interesting that Zack Wheeler, to get them to him to take shorter years, they overpaid the years. So at $42 million, he's like the highest AAV since they signed those ridiculous contracts for Scherzer and for Verlander. So he's at $42 million, 3-year AAV. And I wonder if he's thinking that he calls it a career after 3, or that he's going to get another free agent contract after 3. I don't know what their strategy is, but for the Phillies standpoint, it's interesting that he took 3 years, because these 3 years are the window for them to really make hay. And you're talking about guys that are on rookie contracts right now who by then will have to get paid. The Bohms, the Stotts, all those guys that they have to worry about. And they have to have some young players come through now, because they're way over the salary cap and over the apron. And so they're counting on these lower salary players to really produce. But there's going to be a point in time where they're going to have to pay those guys too. So what was your opinion of the Zack Wheeler 3-year, $42 million per extension?
It's funny you say that, because what stuck out to me more than anything was that a number of times he mentioned, I don't want to pitch when I'm old, or I don't want to be here when I'm too old. I've got family. I've got young kids. And that's why I thought, wow, 3 years, he banks $126 million. He'll be 37, almost 38 at the end of this contract. It makes perfect sense that these are his final 3 years. He's going to go out still physically able, not, his arm's not going to be torn off. It makes perfect sense to me. Maybe he does a 1 or 2 year after this, depending on the status of the team, the organization. But I thought what you were kind of alluding to, that he's not in this game for another 5-8 years. These next 3 years are his earning years, and then he's out.
And these are the 3 years that Phillies management's counting on. I mean, there's no question in my mind that this team is built for 3 years worth of contending and maybe winning a couple World Series. So we'll see how that works out. But the Phillies got their ace now locked up for the next several years. He's on the tail end of this contract too. So I guess you could look at it as a 4-year deal. He'll be here for at least 4 years. All righty, we are talking baseball here on the Mike Missanelli podcast, coming off the discussion of Zack Wheeler's extension. A very special guest joining us, the man that you hear call the games on NBC Sports Philly. He was just in Florida with the squad, giving you a couple games down there. He, of course, is the great Ben Davis. Hello, Ben. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. Just unfortunately had to come back north, but I was enjoying my time in Florida, that's for sure. But I get to go back down.
Were you enjoying your time there, really? And now you came back to this?
Yeah, I'll be going back on Sunday, though, so I'm anxious to get back down there on Sunday.
Oh, very nice. All right, so let's first of all talk about the biggest news that pops up, and it's Zack Wheeler's extension. And it was going to get done. We just didn't know how and when. He settles for 3 years, but the AAV is outrageous at $42 million. What was your reaction to this extension?
Thank God. That was my initial reaction. They had to get this done. In my opinion, he's one of the top 5 pitchers in all of baseball, starting pitchers. And with the Phillies, with the way they are, we know they're going to score some runs. They're going to have some ups and downs offensively with the home run, but starting pitching is going to be key for them. It's the key for everybody. It's the lifeline to getting into the playoffs and ultimately winning a World Series. And what he has done since he's put on a Phillies uniform has been nothing short of spectacular. He's been healthy, knock on wood. He's been durable, and he's been going out there and giving the Phillies a great chance to win every time he goes on the mound. I know it's a lot of money. I was happy about the term and the fact that it's only a 3-year deal. But I just think it was something that the Phillies had to get done, and they got it done, and they're better off for it.
Were you surprised that he limited it to 3 years? Because most guys don't want to do that anymore.
I was a little bit, and for the fact that I thought it would be a minimum 5-year deal that he would want. But again, the Phillies, I think this is good. I still believe that he's in the prime of his career. We haven't seen any drop in velocity. He pretty much has the same velo with the 4-seam fastball and with the 2-seam fastball. So we have not seen that come down at all. He just knows himself. He knows how to pitch, and he's got really good stuff. And that is obviously a perfect combination and a perfect weapon out on the mound.
You know, the thing separates him from me, he's got such great command. Now, you as a former catcher, describe what that's like when you're catching a guy who's around the plate all the time, but pinpoint control with his fastball and everything else that he throws.
Well, it puts the hitter on the defensive. And when you're attacking the strike zone, you just feel, as a hitter, you feel like, man, I don't have his chance against this guy. He's always ahead of me. He's always putting me on my heels. And he has so many different ways to get me out. And that's the thing. It's not like he's just a one-trick pony where he can just dominate you with a fastball. His curveball is good. He's mixing some more changeups. His slider and his cutter, his sweeper. He just has. It's really, if you're JT, you cannot put down a wrong finger. I mean, honestly, you can put down a 1, a 2, a 3. It doesn't matter. He's going to make a good quality pitch with all of his pitches. And from a catching standpoint, it makes your job that much easier. And, I love watching this guy pitch. He actually should have had a few more wins last year, but some of the defense metrics didn't add up. And, the numbers could have been a lot better for him. But I just think this is a great thing that John Middleton and the ownership group and Bucks and were able to get this done. David Dombrowski got this done. This is huge for the team.
Ben, this is obviously a master plan by this organization to take advantage of these 3 years. They got these young kids that, won't be due till 25, 26. So this is the window now. Now, you were down there, and it's a team that disappointingly bailed out of the NLCS. What vibe did you get around this team this spring?
I'm trying to think how I can phrase this. I got a team that is still – they're ticked off still. And I know it was a long time ago, but they have a different – they're poised for a World Series ring. They have a different philosophy down there. It's just like it's very business. It's very professional. But it's a team, I'm telling you, these guys were ticked off last year. To have 2 games in hand here against the Diamondbacks, they're up 2-0, then go out to the desert and just kind of forget how to hit. And then they came back here and scored 2 or 3 runs in 2 games. I think they're ticked off at themselves. I think they're very ticked off the way that season ended because everything was lined up perfectly for them. They were going to face the Rangers in the World Series, and I sure really like their chances against Texas. But I think it just left a really sour taste in their mouth, especially after coming off the World Series the year before. And I think these guys are poised. A lot of them are in the prime of their career, and they know the time is now. This is not a time for development. This is a time to win and bring a trophy back to the city of Philadelphia.
What has to go right for this team to win a World Series this year, and what do you fear most about going wrong?
Health. That's the biggest thing I fear is health and guys getting injured. It's something they've been okay with the last couple seasons, but health is the number one priority. They can keep these guys healthy. I like their chances of getting back there again. They just know how to go about their business. They're very, like I said, they're very professional about what they do. But as long as they can stay healthy, I like their chances. One thing I think this team can do or needs to get better at would be to, and a lot of guys have said this offensively, cut back on the strikeouts. put more balls in play, have better at bats, especially with runners in scoring position. I think no, you're not going to eliminate Chase completely. We heard Rob Thompson tell us that the other day. They're not going to eliminate Chase, but they can cut back on that Chase, and I think that's going to help them out from an offensive standpoint. I likened them last year to almost to a fault to a 3-point shooting basketball team. If those threes are going down, hey man, that's awesome, that's great. But if you're not hitting those threes, you got to find ways, pick and roll, backdoor cuts, whatever. You got to find other ways to score. And if the Phillies aren't hitting home runs, they got to find other ways to score. And I think that's something that they're making a big emphasis on down in spring training with the bunts. They're going to, I think, try and steal a couple more bases this year, advanced runners, especially at the bottom of the lineup. And I think that's something they can do and something they're going to have to do to manufacture some runs. But overall, I that's two biggest keys for me: better at bats and staying healthy. And I like their chances.
All right, Ben, listen, there's a fine line between being disciplined and being aggressive. Now, these guys are all hitters. And so how do you balance that? You're a former major league player. It's one thing in your head to say, I gotta be a little more selective. I got to see a little more pitches here. Because at the end of the year, they start squeezing the bats a little bit. And they got completely out of their discipline, I thought. And it's almost like a golfer. When you get lessons and you go, and then you got these checkpoints in your head on what you have to do. But when you're in the box and you're facing that guy, it's easy to forget that. So how do they balance that?
Yeah, I mean, that old expression, paralysis by analysis. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do is to get in that batter's box and start thinking, because hitting is hard enough. That's the bottom line. But you're right. You don't want to take their aggressiveness away. But I just think there's certain situations where they kind of go up and just don't realize the actual situation and what needs to be done on a particular at-bat. And that's something I think that they can improve upon. No, you can't change the spots in a leopard. We understand that. But I think you can kind of hone in a little bit, try and focus a little bit as to what you're trying to do and how that guy's trying to get me out. I think that they fell into patterns last year where they were, not to a man, but a few guys in that lineup, they were outs, and they know that we knew as fans, we were watching how they were getting pitched, and they didn't make those adjustments. So that, I think, was frustrating for us to watch and also for them from a playing standpoint.
Talking to Ben Davis, former major leaguer and current analyst for Phillies telecast on NBC Sports Philly. Ben, I love when you talk about JT because you have a special affinity for the catching position, and you study catchers and you analyze catchers during the course of a game, and you are fairly amazed by this guy. Tell me why.
Well, the simple fact that he plays every day. I mean, he looks like RoboCop back there. And I talked to Rob Thompson about it. There's, two guys that I played against actually, rather consistently was Ivan Rodriguez, Pudge Rodriguez, and Jorge Posada. And these guys caught every day. And Pudge had to do it in the heat in Texas. And, I got to spend a couple camps in spring training with the Yankees. And I asked Georgie, I said, Georgie, I said, how do you play 150 games a year? He said, I'm a catcher. I catch. And it was very matter of fact. He wasn't trying to blow me off, but he said, that's my job. I'm a catcher. He goes, DJ plays shortstop. He goes, A-Rod plays third base. He said, that's the way it is. He goes, I catch. And I like to play every day. I think JT looks at it like if I have to go to the ballpark today, my tail is going to be playing. And Rob Thompson said trying to get this guy to take a day off is nearly impossible because I feel like I'm going to get in a fist fight with a guy every time because he just doesn't want to come out of the lineup. His productivity doesn't really seem to suffer. And, playing that much, what he means to the pitching staff, how he blocks balls, his pop is there, the way he runs the base. He's not fast for a catcher. Like, he's fast, period. And to be that athletic and to be, an all-class wrestler, he was going to go to Oklahoma State to play quarterback. I mean, you look at his calves. He's got bowling balls that is for calves. I'm enamored by the guy and his ability to go out there day in and day out and still have a lot of production. It means a lot. And, the Gold Gloves, they're there for a reason. He's deserved them. He's worked on them, and he handles that staff extremely well.
All due respect to those guys that play shortstop at third base every day. I'm not diminishing them. They're standing up. They can move around. They can kick a little dirt.
Like
they can swivel their bodies.
I know. When we played the Diamondbacks, we would face Randy Johnson. I was a switch hitter. So Bruce Bochy would give Ryan Klesko a day off. So Ryan Klesko was a left-handed hitter. And I remember a couple games, I would get done playing first base, and I had to go lift weights for like 2 hours. I'm standing out there, I'm like, this is it? This is all you do? You stand, like a guy gets on base, you hold on, you shuffle off a couple of times. Like, that's it? And I'm thinking to myself, how do you not play 162 games? And then you get back, from a catching standpoint, there were games that, obviously games were a little faster back then, but I would be so fried mentally about how to get my pitcher through a certain inning or something. I would be more fried mentally than I would be physically. But all that, it goes into play. But playing first base, or even the infield, it's a whole different animal. I will say, though, that going to the one knee thing is a lot different for these guys. It does take that stress off your legs and your joints. So that does help out.
But you don't like that style, do you?
I don't.
You don't like that style with that splayed out style.
I don't mind it with nobody on, but if there's a runner on third base, I've seen it happen too many times. I've seen it happen in the playoffs where you're not getting yourself a good position to block the ball. That thing I will never understand, and you can't tell me the amount of metrics that you're going to show me or tell me that there's fewer pass balls, there's fewer wild pitches, as they say there are the last couple of years. I know when the guy's on one knee and the guy's on third base and he can't get out to block the ball, and that guy scores. Show me those metrics as well.
But the crouch is physically lethal. I'm curious to know what your knees feel like right now.
Knock on wood, my knees feel great. I don't know how or why, but I'm very fortunate in the fact that I can still squat. I still catch bullpens. My low back gets tight from time to time, but overall my knees feel great. I don't know how or why, because both my parents had both their knees replaced. My brother had his tore his patella. He had his knee done, and here I am being a catcher, and I, knock on wood, have no issues.
Well, let's go back to the origin on how you became a catcher. I mean, you're a big strapping lad, and you get hit. And I don't know if they turn that kind of a physical being into a catcher anymore. So I'm shocked that you stayed at that position. Give me the origin of that and why you stayed as a catcher. I know people say it's the easiest way to get to the big leagues, but what was your story with that?
Well, Little League, just like, I would bet that 95% of all the big leaguers at some point played shortstop or pitched. And, they seem to be the better athletes on the field. I don't care if they're right-handed or left-handed. I guarantee that if you're a good left-handed shortstop in Little League, you're going to play shortstop. But then that's what I did. Once I got to Teener League, when I went to the 60-90 field, there are a few things I could do really well on a baseball field, and running was not one of them. So I was kind of limited as to what I could do out on the field from a defensive standpoint. So I had good hands, I had a good arm, and they could kind of hide me back there because I think my speed and agility would kind of get exposed if I were playing a position. There were times, I remember 13, even 14 years old, I would hit a ball to right field hard, and the right fielder would throw me out at first base on that bigger field. That's how it was going. So it was a great idea for my dad. My dad said, "Hey man, why don't you get behind the dish and see what happens?" And that's where I stuck. And I loved it.
Your lack of speed obviously didn't deter major league evaluators because you turned out to be the second pick in the draft behind Darren Erstad, the kid from played with the Angels and went to Nebraska. But listen to these names. Behind you was Jose Cruz, Kerry Wood, Ariel Prieto, Todd Helton, Jeff Jenkins, Mark Redmond, who played in the league for a long time, Reggie Taylor, who the Phillies took with the 14th pick, and Roy Halladay down there at 17. Now, that's pretty lofty, man. And when you look back at your, first of all, did you talk to the Phillies at all during that whole process?
I don't remember talking to what teams we talked to, what teams we didn't talk to, and that is something that it will just Major League Draft will never ever be an exact science. If you ask the Padres who they wish they would have drafted, I'm sure they would have said Roy Halladay over Ben Davis. But he was 15 picks later. So that shows you how inexact the draft is. A lot is projectability and where they see you down the road. I graduated 6'2", 170 pounds from Malvern Prep. I ended up going 1 year. I went to camp with Seattle. I was 6'5", 260. So it goes to show you how physically I was there, but just the skill set just didn't really kind of equate to being the number 2 overall pick. I was happy I got drafted there. Obviously, I had a great time. I have no regrets other than the fact that I didn't play as long as I wish I could have. I wish I had gotten my 10 full years in. From a pension standpoint, I wish I could have gotten that, my full pension anyway. So, but that's really my only regret.
Listen, being the second pick in the draft is something that nobody could ever sneeze at. So when you look back at your career, it didn't go as well as a lot of people predicted, maybe even yourself and your own family. But you had a decent career, and you lasted in the big league a long time. What do you regret most? Do you regret anything, and would you have changed anything?
I don't know if I would have changed anything. I like to think I had a great work ethic. I like to think I had a good rapport with my pitchers and with my teammates and with my coaches. I honestly, I wish I would have known now about hitting what I didn't. I wish I knew then what I know now about hitting. I was talking with Rob Thompson on last Saturday when I was down in Clearwater. I watched Kyle Schwarber get in there, and he swings. I said, Topper, a hurricane couldn't blow him over when he's done his swing. I mean, his balance was so good before, during, and after the swing. Something we never thought about. It wasn't that big of an emphasis. How to use your hands when you hit a little bit more. The swing dynamic on having a flat bat through the zone. I know the big thing was launch angle a few years ago, but everything started to come back to Trey Turner, Albert Pujols with a flat bat through the zone, good high extension, creating backspin. These were things that we really didn't think about. To have the technology that they have now as well is a huge advantage. I mean, these guys have everything. It's a click away. I remember a reliever coming into a game in San Diego, and our great hitting coach, Merv Retman. So, Merv, what's he got? And he'd be like, go see it and whack it. So it's not like, they're going over counts and this and that. And, now they have guys that have percentages in their head of who's getting what pitch at what particular time, righties, lefties, doesn't matter. This year they'll have the ability. They have this machine. It costs about $350,000, and it's actually a pitcher with the whole thing, and the ball's coming out of a release point. The guy can go hit off. Say, Garrett Cole's coming into the game or whatever. They can go have an at bat against Garrett Cole and then go actually face him on the field. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you really can use this to their advantage. I just wish I knew then. Wish I knew back then what I know now about hitting, because I think I would have been a lot better hitter and just stayed within myself a lot more.
Well, they strap you up with all these microbes now in the off season. You go to these schools and to work on your mechanics. And it's amazing what they're able to do now.
It's crazy. And with the hit tracks and everything like that, very fortunate. Our oldest son is going through some stuff, and we went to a couple different, teams to watch him hit and whatnot. And they had the hit tracks there, and he hit a couple balls, and they said, this one ball he hit, they were, went the thing for Cleveland. And he hit a ball 441 feet. This is all just off a guy throwing BP at, 55 miles an hour. He said he hit it 441 feet with an exit velocity of 107. And I looked at the guy right in the eye. I said, dude, there's no way that's accurate. He said, Ben, this is so spot on, you wouldn't believe it. He goes, it's to a T. He goes, I can tell you what seat it lands in the outfield bleachers. He goes, I can tell you exactly what seat that's going to land in. He goes, that's how accurate it is.
It's mind-boggling. And of course, your son's name's Tate. We're going to talk about him in a second. It's really funny about that Redmond story. I asked Kurt Schilling Johnny Padres in 1990 was a pitching coach of the Phillies in '93, and he used to go out all the time. You make these quick visits. I said, Schilling, what does he talk about when he comes out there? He says, this is what he says. Oh, you're looking good, right-hander. Keep it up. And that's it. And he walks off the mound. Like, that was the extent of what they were telling guys back then.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty much it. I know the one time he came out to see Schill in Cincinnati, and like the first two guys hit home runs in the game, and Schilling wasn't used to that. And every time they would send these fireworks off. I remember Tommy Green telling me this story. It's hilarious. So the first guy hits one, fireworks go off. Next guy hits one, fireworks goes off. Johnny goes out to the mound and goes, hey, Schill. He goes, what the hell are you doing out here? He said, I'm just giving that guy a chance to reload the fireworks. So sometimes you got to know. You got to know your pitcher and know what you can get away with.
The baseball stories are just they're just too
Yeah.
perfect. All these baseball stories over the years. So you brought up, well, I brought up Schilling, and you just told a Schilling story. So I got to bring it up because it's in your Wikipedia page. It's the most notorious thing apparently that's happened to you, thanks to Bob Brenly. He's got a no-hitter going, and it's a 2-0 game. See, I played baseball. I played Division I college baseball, so I understand all these unwritten rules, and I respect them. But there's always an exception to an unwritten rule, and I think you fall under the exception. It's a no-hitter. You guys are down 2, so you're trying to get on base, and you bunt off Schilling for a hit to get a guy on, and they didn't like that very much. Take me through that.
Well, it was actually a perfect game at the time, and Schill was,
Perfect game. Okay.
he was on top of it. And I think my quote after the game was pretty spot on. And then I said to one of the reporters, I said, did you see my first 2 at bats? And the guy said, yeah. I said, did you honestly think I was going to get a hit swinging? And he looks at me. He's like, well, that's a fair point. I said, well, I'm pretty sure Bubba Trammell was behind me in the lineup. I think I was hitting 5th. He was hitting 6th. And Bubba hit 25 that year. I'm thinking if I can get on base, maybe Bubba pops one. It's a tie ball game. If it was 10-0, no, I'm not going to do that. But I just wanted to find a way somehow. I looked out at Jay Bell at second base, and he was playing in shallow right field. I said, all I got to do is bring one with me, and it's I know I can get there. So I can control the bat pretty decently, and that's I got on base, and I went back the next inning.
From all the crap you took for that, if you had it to do all over again, would you have done it?
100%, absolutely. 100%. And I remember going back to catch the next inning, and where at Qualcomm or our old ballpark there, the dugouts were on ground level. There was just like a bench, a little over covering. And I remember going back to catch, and I'm throwing the ball, and I'm looking over, and I'm like, man, those boys are mad at something. And I looked over, it was Bob Brenly and Matt Manti, and Bob Brenly still hasn't said a word to me ever since then. This was 2001. He still has not said a word to me. But I remember, and then I go back in. We finished, and I go back in, and who do I seek? I seek Tony Gwynn. I said, Teague, those boys are hot at me for bunting. He's, man, the hell with those guys. Screw them. And I said, once Tony said it was okay, and Boach said it was okay, then I was cool with it. The coolest thing about that whole thing was we went to Arizona the following week, and we had to face Schilling again. And that was in 2001. The Diamondbacks won it all. They won the World Series that year. And, they sold out every game. They had 55,000 people there. Now batting for the Padres, number 13, Ben Davis. Boo! They booed me, right? So my first bat, I hit a single up the middle off Schill. And then my next at bat, same thing. Boo, boo. I hit a double down the line off Schill. And that kind of shut them up. So I was happier about that than breaking up the perfect game. From a selfish standpoint, it was pretty cool to kind of answer back because he didn't have the same stuff that he had in San Diego.
But, these old school baseball guys like Brenly, who after the game called what you did chicken shit.
Right.
And so you're telling me he has not spoken to you since that?
I've not seen him. And I've seen him numerous times. Obviously, when we travel there, we see him in the hallway or whatever. He hasn't said anything. So, yeah, it was just one of those things.
That's amazing.
He's still upset about it. I mean, it was only 23 years ago.
God. That's unbelievable. All right, let's talk about your son, who is a big-time prospect. And from what I understand, is he committed to Louisville and most likely will not go to college at this point? Like what? And this is, you've been through this, so like, what's your guidance through this whole thing, or are you giving him over to somebody to represent him?
He has hired an advisor. He signed with Wasserman Group, and I actually talked to Zack Wheeler about them last year because Zack has represented by them as well. And he said, I love them. I love those guys. And, something that we came to a family decision about. He gave his verbal agreement his sophomore year. So in the fall of his sophomore year, he just signed his letter of intent a couple months ago. And he couldn't be happier. It's a great program. The program speaks for itself, but the coaching staff down there, man, they're top notch, and they're not going anywhere. And they always talk about development. That's a big thing with us. With regards to the draft, we'll see what happens. I hate to say it, but the almighty dollar would probably be the determining factor. And he's got a great opportunity, obviously, to go to Louisville. If he does sign professionally, that's a great thing as well. So we're just going to have to weigh it and see what happens. But I just tell him, hey man, just have fun your senior year. Enjoy it. Enjoy playing with your buddies. Have fun out there. Go compete, and we'll see what happens. That's all we can do.
From what you've been told, is he a first-round pick? Because that pretty much sealed the deal, I would think, right?
I don't know. We haven't heard with regards to rounds. I know there's a lot of really good players out there. Just watching what he was able to do this summer down in Cary with USA Baseball, Cary, North Carolina, and then out at the Area Code Games in San Diego. He's got a lot of talent. He's very poised to get to that next level. He's left-handed first baseman. He does pitch as well. So that's another big reason that we're signing with the University of Louisville, because they've had experience with two-way guys. Some schools only want him to hit. Some schools only want him to pitch. So Louisville is going to afford him that opportunity. I'm just, he's a good kid. That's, I think, what my wife and I are happiest about. And, we'll see what happens. But I know he's putting his heart and soul into this, and we'll see what happens down the road. But again, I just want him to have fun his senior year and enjoy it. He's not going to ever get it back again.
Last question, kind of related to this. Ohtani is, just a unique animal. But there's a kid at Florida who his name's Jack Castiglione, I guess is how you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
Pitcher hitter. Is it possible that he could follow that Ohtani route in the big leagues?
From what I understand, he's more of a pitcher. He's a very hard thrower. Be honest with you, Mike, I don't know why it doesn't happen more. And I just think that there's a spot. There's some guys could do it. Our first baseman in Seattle is John Olerud, and every year they give out the John Olerud Award for the best pitcher and hitter, two-way guy in the country. And John is, first of all, he's the only guy I've ever seen, only teammate that could eat more than me. But he is the most humble human being in the world. He is just the nicest, quintessential, great human being. And with all his humility, I said, John, because I said, you pitched at Washington State. Do you think he could have pitched in the big leagues? And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, I think I could have. And that's about the most braggadocious thing that John Olerud would ever say. But I just don't know why it doesn't happen more. I guarantee there's some guys that could do it right now, whether that be in the bullpen or start or whatever. I know there's guys that could go to the bullpen and get outs, get 3 outs. There's got to be. But for whatever reason, it's just not, it's not a cool thing to do anymore.
Yeah, this kid throws 99 and he hits moonshots.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anybody who might try to do it. It might be this kid. So watch out for him.
Yeah.
Ben, always a pleasure to catch up, man. And get back down to Florida because I don't think this is golf weather today.
No.
So
no, it's not ideal.
Delco. So we're all good. Thanks, man, and we'll talk to you up the road.
Thanks so much, guys.
All righty. Thanks so much to Ben Davis. That was fun to talk about the Phillies and his career. I say, listen, man, when you get baseball's a damn hard game. It is. And I know better than anybody. But Ben Davis getting picked as the second pick in the draft is something that you can't sneeze at. Whether his major league career worked out as long. He was once considered the best catching prospect since Dale Murphy. Dale Murphy came up as a catcher. And they moved him to the outfield because he was a little more athletic, and Ben admitted he couldn't run. So catching was the only position really that was for him in the big leagues. And when you don't hit as a catcher, you're kind of expendable. You got to at least hit a little bit. Okay, let's move on to some football talk. And we did talk about the Eagles, but the scouting combine finished up this weekend. Darren hates it. I love it. I love watching the gauntlet drill and the cones drill, and especially the 40-yard dash. And I happened to be watching it at the time that Xavier Worthy, a wide receiver from Texas, he runs a 4.25, which is 3/10 off the record. 3/100th off the record. That was set by John Ross in 2017. And John Ross flamed out. This kid could have quit. He could have put the sweats on and say, see ya. I ran 4.25, and that'll get the attention of the NFL scouts. Instead, he goes, I want to break the record. He comes back and he runs 4.22, which tied Ross, but the official timing has him at 4.21, which is the fastest time in the history of the combine. Now, if you don't think that made that kid money, I don't know what he was considered before that, but people will take him to return kicks for crying out loud at this point, running 4.21. He has made himself money. He may even have gone into the back end of the first round. I don't know. But, see, those are the kind of things I like. And I try to look at players, and I go, these guys kind of under the radar. Like when I saw CeeDee Lamb at the combine, I said, this guy's hitting balls suck into his hands. This guy's going to be a great wide receiver in this league. So I'm looking at who impressed me this year. There's a couple quarterbacks that are under the radar. The first three are expected to go. I don't know about Drake May, North Carolina. I think that might be a Mitchell Trubisky kind of mistake. But in any event, guys that are sleepers are going to last beyond the top 10. I'm watching the kid from Michigan. Now, he impressed me a little bit with his arm during the season. I didn't see a lot of it because they ran the football, and against Penn State, they just ran the ball down Penn State's throat, did not throw a pass in the second half. This kid can throw the football. First of all, his velocity was timed at 61 miles per hour on a straight throw, which was second in the whole combine to Joe Milton from Tennessee, who's a maniac throwing the football. So McCarthy's smart. He's accurate. I'm predicting somebody's going to get a sleeper with that kid. Michael Penix, smooth. Ball comes out of his hand. Left-handed thrower comes out. I just think in the NFL, it's going to be a little wild. It's going to be throwing it all over the place. He's going to have to learn. Joe Milton from Tennessee. Tell me what the difference is between that kid and Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson was way overvalued, but because he had that kind of arm and speed, somebody took a shot on him early. Joe Milton does the same thing. He's this year's Richardson. So we'll see where that kid goes. And wide receiver, Xavier Worthy obviously made himself some money, but there's a Caucasian in the field for the first time in a long time, right? This kid from Georgia, and I've seen him for the last 2 years. This kid's going to be – he's a fast who is the white receiver for Minnesota who had a lengthy career and kind of came out of nowhere? He's still – you know what I'm talking about. The kid – he was played last year. He played for the Vikings. He came out with the Vikings at a smaller college.
Adam someone with TH.
Yeah. Thielen.
That's right.
And this kid, I predict, is going to be a good player for somebody. Ladd McConkey from Georgia. I already love their tight end. The next Travis Kelce in the league is the kid. What's his last name?
Bowers or Bowens, something like that.
Bruce Bowers, yeah. A stud. And when he was a freshman, I could tell he was a stud.
By the way, Ladd McConkey, not Phil's son. I had to look that up.
No, he's not. He's not Phil's son.
Not related to Phil McConkey.
Defensive end, watch out for the kid from Penn State. He's going to be there when the Eagles select. Will the Eagles take Chop Robinson out of Penn State, who was very impressive at the combine? Will they take Chop? But I'm thinking that more like that they will take the cornerback from the MAC, who Quinion Mitchell, who also dazzled with the strength lift, and I think he moved out of the realm of the Eagles pick. Unless they trade up, I don't think they're getting that kid from Toledo, Quentin Mitchell. So we'll see what they do there. But offensive line, they're going to have to take one eventually. And at pick 22, the kid from Washington, Roger Rosengarten, will still be there, Darren. Keep that name on your ledger. Roger Rosengarten, who may be the heir apparent to Lane Johnson. All right? There you go. All right, that's my combine report. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Mike Missanelli podcast. You can reach me, email mike@mikemiss.com or on Twitter at MikeMiss25. And everybody have a great rest of the day. It's cold and it's damp. I played golf for the first time on Sunday since my knee surgery. I walked 18 holes, Darren. I walked 18.
And how's the new wheel?
It was probably a little bit. It was probably a little bit too much. I probably should have walked just 9, but I'm an idiot like that. So anyway, have a great rest of the week with all this rain that's coming down, and we will talk to you later this week on the Mike Missanelli podcast. See you.